Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Matthew Arau, and thanks for joining me in our Skull session after hours at CSI Connect 2020. And this has really been an incredible 2 days. Just so uplifting, so inspirational to spend time with you and to listen in to presentations by some of my lifetime heroes. It's just incredible to be able to learn from such wonderful human beings such as Larry Livingston, Paula Kreider, Tim Lotzenheiser, Frank Troika, John Gomez, Aaron Cole Steele. The list goes on and on and on. Just amazing people. And I'm so glad that you've decided to take the time together. I wish this was like a Zoom for this meeting so that we could really be face to face and you could engage verbally. But it's not. So let's go ahead and make the best of the situation, which can be super positive. So some of your questions that you've put in the chat have to do with culture and mindset. And I did go ahead and create a slide for this that maybe we'll launch at the official start time. But as you're coming on board, as you're joining us, go ahead and write down your greatest memories, greatest takeaways, maybe in the chat from CSI, and what you learned. And also let me know: is this your first CSI, or are you a veteran? Have you been here before? If it's your first CSI, I'd love to really know what you think. And if you're a vet, what are your takeaways? And it truly is amazing that this was put together in a 12-week sprint. And the staff, I think they barely slept as they were preparing this. I know Rania told me that she was basically in her office in Elkhart, just how many hours? Like 15 hours a day. She was in her office working nonstop 7 days a week to prepare. So it really was amazing what people did to prepare. And so, yeah, I'm just really, really amazed with how people came together. And so we have some first timers. Crystal, your very first time. Awesome. And Evan, second time. Hannah, your first CSI. If you want to also, if you've just joined us, if you want to also just let me know where you're from and what grade level you teach as well, that'd be awesome. I've heard from Evan. He's in Atlanta, Georgia, teaches beginning band, just finished his third year of teaching. And congratulations. It's often getting through the third year of teaching, which really is a landmark and leads to a much higher percentage of people staying in the profession. And one of the things we do want to talk about tonight is how to create a sustainable career. And Evan, if you have some thoughts for us on what you've done to keep it sustainable, that would be awesome. And go ahead and share with us. If you've taught more than 3 years, I'd love to hear about maybe your methods for taking care of yourself, for self-care, to make sure that you're at your best for your students, and so that you can lead a really long and healthy, sustainable career. We have Ben joining us from DC, Everest, and Wausau, Wisconsin, grades 8 and 9. All right. Not too far away from where I live in Neenah, Wisconsin, just outside of Appleton, where I teach at Lawrence University. We have Hannah from Michigan. And that's right. Awesome. And we met in the college track earlier today. And that's fantastic. I did a clinic for a band in Warsaw, a virtual clinic a few years ago. I actually did a leadership workshop for the high school in Warsaw, Indiana. And Crystal's in her third year in Frederick, fourth year in Wisconsin, 7 total years. Good for you. And welcome, Serena. Glad to have you joining us for our skull session. The first time I did CSI and they asked me to do a skull session, I really had no idea what a skull session was. I didn't I'd never heard the phrase before. So once I finally figured out Skull Session means that you can go pick somebody's brain, I was like, oh, okay. So Skull Session is just really going to be a relaxed atmosphere where we can talk about anything that's on your mind. The topic tonight officially is creating a sustainable career, self-care, leadership, and growth mindset in challenging times. But we can discuss anything that's on your mind tonight, and hopefully we can be creative and have some solutions together, and I'll offer some insight. But really, I feel that we're so much more together. So if we can be really active in the chat and sharing experiences with each other and what we've learned, we can really help each other out. This is great. So Evan shared with us in his third year of teaching that he's really been able to sustain a healthy career by trying different things each year, picking up different ideas from each of the different workshops, conferences, Midwest, State MEA Conference, Music for All, and of course, CSI. Oh, that's fantastic that you really get to a lot of them to just continue to grow and learn. Good for you. Oh, Serena's from Nova Scotia. Welcome. Grade 6 to 9 band. Next year I start high school, 10 to 12. Well, good luck with that. That's going to be very exciting. And I wonder if it's going to be some of the same students that you taught. I wonder if those 9th graders are going into your 10th grade. Hey, and my good friend from Brisbane, Australia, Michael Jones, is joining us. You guys can all say good day, mate, from your computer to welcome Michael from Australia, which means he's 15 hours ahead of where I am in Central Time. So if you can do the math, that must mean it is 9 a.m. in Brisbane. So Michael's probably been teaching for a couple hours and able to jump on the Skull Session. It's great to spend some time with you tonight, Michael. And Amanda from Chautauqua, Wisconsin. So glad you're spending some time here. Crystal talks about massage therapy is great. Oh my gosh, you're not kidding. Yeah, too bad we can work that into CSI Connect. Where like part of the entry fee is everybody got a free like shoulder rub or something like that. How awesome would that be? It's 9 a.m. Yes, Michael says. And Crystal welcomes Michael. Good day, Michael. And fantastic. All right. Well, we are going to chat a bit tonight, and we're going to share in the chat as much as possible, and I'll reflect. But if you have a question, if you can go and maybe mark it, I'll try to mark some of yours as questions or topics. But I'm looking at Evans. Why don't we start with that one? Evans says, how can we address the social issues going on right now with our kids, if we even can? So if your school is in session, and I'm assuming, Evan, that you're talking about the Black Lives Matter and the protest and the violence and all of that going on right now. And I think that we can create spaces for students to feel safe to talk and share their thoughts and feelings, and we can be supportive. And I imagine for most of us, our students are no longer in school as school is out. But if you feel like you've created spaces online that students could return to reach out and just check in. And I do think that students are under a great deal of stress right now. And if we can continue to be a support system through these divisive, challenging times, with letting students know that you're there for them if they want to talk, and that you are supportive of them, and just create that space. Because I think that's one of the most important things we do as music teachers, is we are that safe place, that place for family for our students. So letting them know that you're there for them can continue in the summer. I know that I shared that with my Lawrence students as they wrapped up their final class on Friday, just to let them know that, hey, I'm here for you. I'm always here for you. I'm here all summer. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be there to support them through their student teaching. And I've assured them that I'll be there to support them through their entire career. So I think as music teachers, if we can spread the message to our students and say, like, hey, if you need to talk, if you need to Zoom, if you need to Google Hangout, If you need a phone call, let them know that you're there for them. I do think that there are things that we can do as music educators to create more inclusive spaces for music, to make sure that we celebrate composers of underrepresented groups and genders, and make that a really important part of our education. And I think that's a real positive step we can take as music teachers, if we haven't already. So I know that many music teachers have already taken really positive steps in that direction. So I just wanted to respond to that. So Evan, if you want to ask like a follow-up to that, let me know. But I want to kind of get that discussion going. And if anybody has any responses or thoughts, I think that would be great. So Michael's jumped in and says, you need to consider giving them agency in this context to communicate their point of view. Yeah. Thank you. I think we can't assume that we know what our students are going through or what's on their mind. And our students are coming from many different places. And so just being compassionate and listen first. I think it's really important to remember the adage, seek first to understand, then to be understood. But to model good character and good morals and good ethics, and to model respect for others. And I think that's one of the most important things we can do, is to create a place in our music room that is supportive for our students. All right, so I'm gonna kind of just look through the chat here. And as I'm skimming through the chat, I'm seeing a little bit from Michael in Australia. Just come from band rehearsal, mate. I've been working with my year 6 crew for the past 1.5 hours. Looking forward to joining in here for a little while. And Michael Jones is a band director in Brisbane, Australia, and they've returned to school. And Michael, maybe you could share in the chat how that looks, because I think in the United States, we are wondering how we're going to return to playing in ensembles. If you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat how that's looking, what changes you've made, and maybe provide a picture or some hope for us as we hope to return to making music in person in the fall shortly in the United States. Love to hear from you. And let's see, going through the chat here. Okay, Crystal, thank you for bringing up a topic to talk about. And any of you want to jump in, it'll be great to keep the conversation going. So Crystal says, I want to work on growing a positive and inclusive mindset with my kiddos, especially the middle schoolers. They can be mean. Ideas on how to help cure that meanness. Well, if we were live, I'd probably ask the group, I say, how many of you have students that are mean to each other? Maybe they're not mean in rehearsal to each other, but maybe you know that outside of rehearsal, there might be some meanness at the middle school level. And I don't know if there's a cure for meanness. I do think that, being growing up in adolescence can be really hard for students, but we need to teach another way, I suppose. Students often act the way their peer group does, and they're influenced by their peers. And we can strive to make our band or orchestra or choir a place where that's not okay. And that the culture that we create here is one built on principles, and that every person is honored and respected. And then if they're not, then there needs to be a consequence. And we talk about the importance of creating a safe community for all. And then we need to follow through with it. And sometimes there's a little bit of tough love in creating a positive culture. It's not that we see everything through a rose-colored lens and ignore when things that are not okay. We need to point things out when they're not okay and let students know that their behavior is not okay for a certain reason, and that it doesn't belong in an ensemble, which an ensemble is about coming together for a common cause. And so one of the things that I found effective is working with students to decide what the common cause is. What's our alignment of vision? What's our purpose together? Not what's my purpose, but what's our purpose, and why are we making music, and why is this important? And when students are given voice and given agency, they are inclined to buy in and want to be part of the group and want to become part of whatever the dominant culture of behavior is. So if you ever notice that when a student moves into your music ensemble, they might have a different way of thinking about acting in rehearsal, but quickly they become aware of what the standards are for your rehearsal, the standards of excellence, the standards of behavior. And so you can play an important role in creating that culture. And sometimes our students are a reflection of ourselves. And so we often need to think about what can I do to change how I am interacting with my students? Am I letting my own agitation come out and be projected to my own students because I'm feeling this way inside? I always feel like if we're feeling really tight inside, it'll come out in how we react. And we want to get to that place where we can actually choose our response. And when we can, we'll start to see that levels of positive culture will elevate. And Crystal, if you want to ask a follow-up to that, that'd be great. But that's off the cuff, just my first thought. Okay, so here you are. So do you think asking them to help choose the year's goal would be a helpful step? I'm so glad you have that follow-up question. I do believe that. I'm really a believer in involving students in the process. I think that students want to know the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And they want to feel like they had a part in the process. And they don't like the idea of the teacher kind of imposing the why on the student. And when the students can be part of this dialogue, the buy-in goes way up, and it's incredible what can happen. There's a student from Colorado who attended a session I did in January in Colorado Springs, and she was inspired to go back to her 7th and 8th grade band students. And the first rehearsal after the conference, she went back and they sat around and they talked about their goals. And she let the students talk about it. And all of a sudden, by asking the students what they wanted, their motivation level went through the roof. They started practicing harder. They were more excited about band. In fact, they worked so hard, they asked the director if they could have an extra concert. So they literally inserted an extra concert. And this is amazing because their additional concert happened just about a week before the shelter-in-place order, which is really cool. So I know you said kind of sneaky, but it's awesome when we give students voice. We learn that they have a lot to say, that they are invested, that they do care. Oftentimes the students that are the most disruptive actually care the most. And they just need to feel like they have a voice. And maybe we can all reflect on that and feel the same way as teachers, that when we are not given a voice, we might get irritated or not be supportive of the group we're in. So, oh, I love this, Crystal. I was thinking of asking them to make personal musical goals for lessons this year. Right. Yes, why not? Let's plan ahead. We don't know what the fall is going to look like. Nobody has a crystal ball. I know we're all doing our best to make plans, but I think we're all aware that there could be a possibility of returning, but then returning to school and then returning back to home for a continuation of online learning. And this time we can be much more prepared. So emphasizing the importance of independence and creating personal musical goals is a great idea. And let's see, Michael. Just wanted to see what's going on in Australia. So as I was saying, Australia has gone back to school. So Michael writes in the chat, we are now working to 20 in a room. So 20 students in a room, sectionals for the past 2 to 3 weeks, heading back to full rehearsals next term from July. All right. We're all giving you a round of applause and excited for you to be able to do that. And there'll be social distancing and hygiene procedures, but you'll be able to get back to making music in person. Love it. All right. And Hannah jumps in to support this idea of giving students voice. She says, I want to offer that my mentor teacher last year really did a good job with this. We didn't sing for the first week, really. It was mostly team building activities. I was surprised that she gave up that instructional time to do this. but she assured me that it was worth it. And it sounds, Hannah, like it was, that the payoff was great. So this is a form of empowerment, a form of leadership. It's about showing that we believe in our students. And when we do that, sometimes the results are near magical. Michael says, you can even bring them to yes or the ideal way, covertly this way. All right. Okay, so we've been talking about empowerment and leadership, and Crystal says, how do you feel about leadership teams in middle school groups? Should they be the same or a different structure from high school? And I think that it depends on what the leadership structure is at the high school. If we're talking band, a lot of high school bands start their leadership structure based on what are the needs for the marching band, right? So there's the drum major and then the series of hierarchy from the drum major. Some have woodwind sergeants, brass sergeants, different titles, possibly drum captains, guard captains, front ensemble captains, and section leaders for each section. And then in addition to that, many programs will have like a president, somebody, a social person, a historian, secretary, treasurer, all this other groups for leadership. In the middle school level, you may or may not have, most of you won't have marching bands, so it's going to be a different leadership structure. And I'm all about empowering students. So if you can create a structure that works for you, that's fantastic. And it might mean that you simply have section leaders and you teach your section leaders how to lead sectionals, and you teach your section leaders how to be effective, respectful leaders. You talk about communication strategies. You talk about how to prepare to lead a sectional, what that looks like. I think we need to teach students how to practice, and we need to teach our students how to teach if we're going to expect them to teach others. We also need to teach our students how to lead if we're going to expect them to lead others. One of the challenges I've seen is that we often will just deem a student a leader and say, okay, now go off and lead. And we haven't given them the adequate support and coaching to help them be successful. So I would say probably different at the middle school level, but still really important. At a minimum, section leaders at the middle school level. If there's middle school teachers on this talk that have gone with a president and a vice president and those kinds of things at the middle school level, I'd love to hear from you. But generally what I see is the section leader approach. So, and it's wonderful to continue to see from Michael in Australia. Says the kids are excited to come back. There's so much enthusiasm entering the building every morning now. So great to be around. Wow. Okay. So what I'm hearing from you, Michael, is that it's like a new energy. Maybe every student is not taking it for granted. Maybe the teachers aren't taking it for granted. Maybe are the students more appreciative of what they have you found, with them returning? Because if they are, I think that's, to use Dr. Tim's phrase, one of the silver linings of this time is that I hope that we all return, our students and us return to being with in-person teaching with a greater appreciation. Maybe even some of the things that used to bug us before, like maybe the plastic reed cases strewn about the band room, or the musty smell of the old saxophone cases in the storage room, those things that used to bug us, or maybe even staff in-person meetings that it was like, oh gosh, not another meeting. I wonder if we will approach those with newfound appreciation for getting to be together and the symbolism of what it all means. I'm just excited to hear, Michael, that that's happening. So Crystal writes, I don't have leadership teams yet. Had 10 kids in high school band, 42 in middle school last year, so trying to figure it out. Had all 10 high schoolers do Scott Lang's leadership COVID course. Well, I think that that's a great thing, because you're asking them to respond to questions, that teaching about character, learning about leadership beyond the normal like music day, right? And if we can encourage students to think outside the box and think about citizenship skills that they can learn through music, to realize that music teaches about teamwork and and respect and compassion and seeking first to understand, then to be understood, and being proactive and discipline and resilience and perseverance. That's fantastic. Okay. When do you talk to section leaders about how to lead? Hannah, wonderful. And when do you have these conversations with students? Do you meet with them after school? So Hannah, when I was a band director in Colorado, I created what's called the Leadership Symposium. And the Leadership Symposium did meet after school once a week for about an hour. And it was open to every student in the band. And participation was absolutely voluntary. But students that were interested in becoming leaders attended, students who really cared about the direction of the band attended, and we would discuss things related to leadership, but often talking about creating a vision for where we wanted the band to head. What kind of traditions did we want to create? And so we did meet after school. However, you can alter this because with middle school, it might be difficult to have students stay after school or come before school. You can have lunch room meetings, and that's a variation that a lot of schools have used to create a leadership symposium. You can also make leadership training an insertion into your rehearsal. So if you came to some of my presentations, you could see I had a variety of slides. You could actually use a slide like one of those, project it through your smart board or your whiteboard or however you project images, and have a real quick conversation about it and how it pertains to teaching and leading. And therefore, you're not just teaching the section leaders, you're teaching the entire band, which is cool because you never know when you might be asked to step up to lead. A section leader today might not be a section leader tomorrow if you have a challenge system. So it's really important that these principles are taught to the whole band. And really, I think leadership is more than a title. It's about how we treat each other. And so go ahead and share these skills and ideas with your entire band, I think, or choir or orchestra. I think that it will lift everybody up. And Shannon has done a really great post here to share with us. She says, I've had actual positions, attendance, great. That's a great idea. Music manager, wonderful. She says, it didn't go as well as I'd hoped because there wasn't always a lot for certain positions to do. One structure that I did enjoy as a middle school director was having a few representatives per class in a large leadership team that I met with periodically. We talked about leadership topics and discussed how to be a leader in the room. Wonderful. They volunteered more often to help. They asked questions to show others it was okay. They set a good example during rehearsals. And during my meetings with them, they gave feedback about class. Oh, I love this. How they felt, the atmosphere, their favorite parts, their least favorite parts. They also helped plan fun social things for the group, spirit days in the band room. Well, Shannon, I am absolutely sold. I think that is wonderful. And it sounds like there was a big payoff. It sounds like because you created this space to listen to your students, they were more motivated to be proactive in your rehearsals. Plus, they gave you the added bonus of sharing their own feedback to you about how they felt about class. I'd be curious about when you met with the students, because maybe that would help. I think it was Hannah that asked that question. But what you're doing to create the space to do that is absolutely fabulous. Wonderful. And Michael here says, absolutely, they have missed the gathering and sharing. This is back to Australia, where they've returned back to making music making in person. The first rehearsal back for all of them was incredible. Oh my gosh. I just pause before I read this because I think everybody here who hasn't been able to return is just, this is like, it must be a dream come true. They were so happy to be in the same room, playing at the same time, hearing things in real time. Also so important was the other music elements, speaking with their mates as they get ready. Yes, interact with each other in the room, see people in real time, not on a screen. These are the things I think we never thought about. We just didn't know what we had before, but now we do. And when we get to return, that's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. And Serena says the Leadership Symposium sounds great. It really transformed my program and what happened in my career, actually. And we called it the Leadership Symposium. The students and I came up with that as a name for what we were doing. And actually, I'll give you a little bit of backstory on it, because maybe some of you can relate to these challenges. But when I took over the program, there had been a really rough year before I arrived. And one of the things that had happened was the percussion instructor at the high school had quit on the band between the semifinals and finals. And then at the semester, he told all the percussionists that they could choose between being in the high school band or his outside of school percussion ensemble. And over 90% of the percussionists quit the band at the semester to stay in the out of school percussion ensemble. So the band directors had to start a percussion section from scratch with the wind players the second semester. And then both band directors decided on the same day to leave the school. And the legend is that one walked in and the other one was already in the office, said, "Hey, I have something to tell you." The other one said, "Oh, I have something important to tell you." And they said, "You go first." "No, you go first." And then the head director said, "I'm going to take early retirement." And the other director said, I'm leaving to go teach junior high in another school district. And so when I took over the program, there was a lot of healing to do, and it was not a smooth transition. And so beginning the Leadership Symposium was actually a step towards healing, a step towards giving a listening space to honor the students and to help, in a way, build a program on a blank slate. We had to decide, what did we stand for? What did it mean to be a member of the band to move forward? And by giving students voice and agency and actually training and teaching on leadership principles, it started to filter into the entire program. I really got excited when I got a phone call from one of my students from Barnes & Noble one day, Barnes & Noble bookstore, and it was Johnny. And he said, "Hey, Mr. Arau, this is Johnny." I said, "Johnny, how are you?" And he said, "Hey, I'm in a Barnes & Noble bookstore. I'm in the business management section." I said, "What are you doing there?" He said, "Well, I'm looking at leadership books, and I saw this great book called Developing the Leader Within You by John Maxwell. Can we get it for the band leadership library?" And I was like, "Yeah, Johnny, that's great. I'll make sure I go buy it tomorrow," which I did. And I was so thrilled that all of a sudden the students were buying in and they were getting excited. And eventually the students started leading the Leadership Symposium and teaching chapters from different leadership books on their own. And so to be able to lead leaders, I think, is one of the greatest joys, to empower students to become leaders themselves and to get enthusiastic about it is incredible. So it has been really, really positive. So that's sparked some thoughts here. Let's see. Hannah says, "In choir, the sections are bigger, so having the whole choir learn about leadership would be really useful." Absolutely wonderful. And then Evan says, "Was there an interview on how to choose them?" Oh, absolutely. So there was for middle school leadership. Okay, back to that. Yeah. So that's great. And let's see. Okay, Hannah responded. That's a good indication they might have an aptitude to learn how to be a leader. All right. So I just want to see if Evan's asking me or if he's asking the other teacher who posted about it. So here's an interesting thing about leadership. Oftentimes we audition students just based on their playing ability, and therefore they become the section leader, right? And then they become the leader. And that's common. But when you're auditioning for student leadership positions, particularly at the high school level, I think it's much more than just playing ability. And that's why when we audition students for leadership positions, it's important to have an interview, a written statement, maybe even a service project, and a teaching component. We would always have a teaching component because being a leader meant that you were going to be a teacher. And so we would coach students on how to teach each other, and they would practice, and then the audition actually involved teaching somebody a concept. They also were adjudicated on their performance level. So it was the whole package. And then there was another category that was overall leadership quality, which basically said that you've been auditioning to be a leader from day one. You've been making an impression. So what you've been doing in our program has already been projecting and broadcasting who you are as a leader. So that became an important component as well in the selection of leaders So I think that that's really, really important. Oh, great. So Shannon clarifies that she has a homeroom, was able to have some meetings during that time. Others were after school for leadership training. That's fantastic. And love what Michael says, we're teaching people through music. Amen. Amen. That's wonderful. And thank you, Michael, for wishing us all well, that we'll all get to return to teaching in person soon enough. And Shannon says she had an application as well. Wonderful. This is fantastic. If a student wants to be a leader, take on the responsibilities, get indication. Absolutely. So this talk is about creating a sustainable career, self-care, leadership, and growth mindset in challenging times. And I think it's fantastic that we've gravitated towards talking about the leadership side of things, because it actually complements having a sustainable career, doesn't it? There's so many things on our plate if we just do everything. There's a slide that I used to show. It says like the responsibilities of a music teacher, or the many hats of a music teacher, right? And it's just, the person has like 30 hats on their head with all these different descriptions of job titles that we take on as music teachers. And when you empower students to be leaders, you can start taking off some of those hats and empowering them to take on different responsibilities. Think about all the different responsibilities a student can do. Go ahead and write in the chat things that a student can do to take off our plate so that we can focus on what we're trained to do, what we've gone to school to do, so that we can focus on the teaching of music and conducting and all that. So think about how we can empower others. And let's all say good day to Michael and thank him for joining us all the way from Brisbane. It looks like has to head to a meeting with his principal. And thanks a lot for taking the time to spend time with us at CSI, Michael. Good day. Fabulous. All right. And so leadership is actually one of those things that when you start a leadership program, it really, really helps you focus on what you're best at and can take a lot of the stress off of us, right? And some of you are starting to write in the chat box. Thank you, Serena, for sharing this. Attendance, stacking chairs, putting stands away. Dr. Tim did a session at the Midwest Clinic a couple years ago about the director who has to be in control of everything, has to be the one to set up the chairs and set up the stands. And because it's almost like this OCD idea, right? Like the control person. And he shared that we really need to get over it. We need to get over it and share those responsibilities with other students. And that is really empowering for students. It doesn't have to be a job. It can be a reward to be the person who gets to do those, to take pride in elevating the appearance and in the atmosphere of the rehearsal is key. Crystal shares copy captain, music collectors, sorters. Absolutely. I always had students that love to take the music, put it in score order, file it in the library, keep the library organized. It's going to be really meaningful to be given responsibilities like that when you're a student. Some students like to be involved even in the writing of program notes for concerts. That can be exciting. You can even have students announce at concerts. That's another way to get them involved. Maybe you have students make posters for the band room for different reasons. You can have students decide on spirit days for your music group, and that can really create a lively culture, creating pride. Maybe a student designs a shirt for your group, or you have a student design some kind of social media aspect of your program to really promote things. Maybe you have a student who's in charge of PR in some ways, public relations, promoting your program. Maybe you have a student who's in charge of community outreach. So you make service an important element of your program beyond the concert, beyond the typical concert. Maybe you put together chamber groups to play at retirement homes and senior centers and find places where you can give back to the community. And empower students to reach out and make those calls and give them voice. We're providing an opportunity through music to help students grow into the best version of themselves as human beings. And Serena's added plan treats or decorate for houses and concerts. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. That's great. Decorate the room for coffee houses or concerts. And some of you may have jazz combos or small groups that can go out in the community. You can empower students that way. I shared in one of my presentations the power of chamber music. You can have 4, 5, 6 chamber music groups rehearsing simultaneously. If you can spread them out throughout the halls and maybe some different rooms, and you can walk around and coach them, but you're really just checking in and giving the true influence to the students. And that's a wonderful way to help them grow as musicians and as leaders. So one of the other things that can be so helpful in our profession is this idea of growth mindset. And if you're like me, I think that along the way, there were certain things that I started identifying that I was good at or I wasn't good at. And that really got in my way. And I used to think of the word talent. I don't know if any of you have thought about this as music teachers. Have you ever thought about like being talented or not being talented, or you've had students that are talented or students that you thought were not talented, and how that could have impacted our approach with students? I have. And it wasn't until I started reading the research on growth mindset and the talent code by Daniel Coyle and talent is overrated by Jeff Colvin that I started to discover that talent is recognized after the hard work, not before. And that no matter where we are, we can teach a student to grow their skills, and that talent is merely layer upon layer upon layer of skills. And that's why you can go to a music program and they place exceptionally well. And it's not that that group of students had this innate talent. It's that they had a process of learning and a process of teaching that was at such a great level. Students learned how to stretch just beyond and achieve, and then stretch beyond that and stretch beyond that. And they did it as a group. And so I've really become a believer in this idea that we are teaching skills and that talent doesn't play a role in teaching music. And if talent is just merely divinely given or something like that, then it doesn't matter to me, because I'm going to teach the students that are in front of me. And I know that I can teach skills. The skills can be taught and skills can be learned. And that's what my role is as a teacher. And when I discovered that, it really transformed everything for me. And I realized that no matter where my students are today, I can help take them so far and help me realize this idea of unlocking potential, that one of our jobs as a teacher is to unlock our students' potential. So teaching growth mindset to our students, teaching our students about the power of leadership and empowering others. And really through empowering others, we empower ourselves. That's a interesting concept. There's an author named John Maxwell who wrote a book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And he set up a series of 21 principles about leadership. And one of the important laws is the law of empowerment, which says that when you empower others, your leadership level actually rises. It can be actually really vulnerable and perhaps a little bit scary to give away power to somebody else, to give responsibility to somebody else. But the act of doing that actually shows your strength of character and your strength of leadership to be able to do that. And so really consider that when you return to work with your students, to see, are there places where you can give your students more voice, more choice, more agency? Can we make our programs more student-centered? And I think when we do that, we'll recognize that the quality of life, the quality of our culture elevates. And when that happens, I think we're going to enjoy our daily lives even more, which is going to help us create a more sustainable career, right? And thank you, Serena, for sharing in the chat, the talent code and talent is overrated. I found those really, really great. I'm going to share one other one. It's called Peak, The New Science of Expertise by Anders Ericsson. I'll try to spell his name and put that in the chat. It's difficult to spell his last name. That's why. Not sure if I got it. I might have 2 C's and 1 S. I'm not sure. Peak. If you look up Peak, he's actually the person who did the original research on talent and skill building and came up with this idea that people refer to as the 10,000 hour rule. And I think it's really a great read and to really transform the way you think about the role of teaching music. It starts off in the first chapter with a study in Japan with young students that were put in this project to teach them perfect pitch. And at the end of a year, 90% of the students who had been randomly selected had developed perfect pitch, which completely debunked the theory that perfect pitch is only something that you're born with. And it showed that even perfect pitch can be taught, particularly at a young age. So I thought that was really, really exciting. Oh, thanks, Crystal, for sharing that. You guys are so wonderful. And Dr. Tim's right. CSI would not be what it is without you. And this is just so wonderful. All the sharing with each other. We learned so much. I hope that many of you have exchanged contact information with the people you've been meeting in your sessions, and so that you can continue to learn from each other. This is great. Fantastic. There's a book called The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell that was really, really popular. He popularized the term, the 10,000 hour rule. And that's an interesting read as well. But the true hard facts come in the other books that I shared. So Talent is Overrated, The Talent Code, and Peak. Those are the stronger sources. If you haven't read a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, I think that's one that could change your life. So it certainly changed mine. It absolutely changed mine. There's a 3-minute YouTube video that I made or was filmed of me talking about a session about growth mindset. So if you just look at Matthew Arau, Believe in Students, I should say on YouTube. Somebody wants to find the link and share that, go for it. That would be great. I'm also going to share just a couple things here for you. Some of you might have already gotten these, but just in case you weren't at my prior sessions, I'm sharing my website, upbeatglobal.com, for a collection of resources. And if you're a band director that has student leaders at the high school level, we're offering a online drum major and leadership camp at the end of July. And so I'm excited you can find out about that on my website. And then there's a list of resources you can check out too. Hopefully you all got that. Wonderful. Yeah, and Crystal says, yes, especially for those of us who are small district folks. I'm one of 2 teachers. One of 2 teachers, K through 12. Wow. So yeah, empowering students for leadership, really, really important. Okay, do you have tips on work-life balance? I know it's a big job. And thank you, Serena, for asking that question. Yes, I do. It's important to devote time to the people in your life that are not involved in your job, to have time set aside to give to them, and to try to really separate it. And so much the challenges, I think, have to do with the phone, right? Like the phone is always with us, and it's like we don't escape it. And so if you can set the phone down and really put it on do not disturb when you're spending time with the people in your life that are really important to you, away from your job, that's one really key thing. The other thing is just finding internal balance to begin with. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of looking within, self-reflection, and finding moments for self-care and creating a routine, really. So for me, it's how I choose to wake up in the morning, what I think about first things in the morning. I focus on gratitude upon waking up. After I make some tea or coffee, get that going, I actually meditate for about 10 to 15 minutes in the morning. and just really focus on my breathing and slowing everything down. And while I'm meditating, I may again focus on gratitude or think about the kind of day I want to create. I'll do some stretches. I try to go on a mindful walk in the morning if I can, or a swim or something to just kind of free my mind and appreciate what I do have. And that helps ground myself in the morning. I also read a few pages from an uplifting book, and sometimes I'll journal a little bit. That helps get me grounded. And I think that's actually part of finding work-life balance, is to start with grounding ourselves so we don't let our hectic, frantic life make us out of control. And so then we can be truly present for whomever we need to be present for. That means that every student that comes to see us, we can be present in the moment for them. When another teacher comes to talk to us, we're present for them. When we come home, and if we have a significant other or a spouse, we are able to be present for them. And some people, will set a time frame that they will not look at emails, or a particular time when they actually will look at emails. And that's a wonderful process that some people have found to be effective. But I find that finding this balance of taking care of yourself with what you eat, what you put into your body, that does have a huge impact. Trying to find some form of exercise, but sleeping well is important. So almost protecting that time and avoiding screen time before going to bed can be really important. So I think that work-life balance begins with finding balance within and then sharing that with others. Yeah, Evan, thanks for jumping in here. Self-reflection is great if you can do it without judgment. And you know what? I should say that we need to give ourselves grace, and mindfulness is not anything that we ever master. And once you realize that it's about being non-judgmental and just accepting your thoughts and like not being hard on ourselves, that's the opposite of what we want to do when we're meditating, because our thoughts will come and go, and sometimes we'll go down the rabbit hole with our thoughts. But the minute you realize that you're thinking, then you can return to your breath. And that's fantastic. So just taking the time out, if it's 10 minutes, maybe it's just 5 minutes, sitting and quietly breathing. Maybe you listen to some soothing music. Maybe you use an app like Headspace or the Waking Up app or something like that to ground yourself. That can be really, really powerful. But I think being present, being in the now is one of the most important things we can do, and loving really what we do. So if you go to school, excited to work with your students, focusing on what you want to create rather than what you don't want. So don't think about all the students that drive you crazy or whatever. Think about making a difference in somebody's life. And the students will even notice a difference in how you carry yourself, the energy in your voice, and they'll start to perk up and be like, something's a little bit different. They might not know what it is, but it could just be that you've become more centered and grounded and found time to take care of you. So just some thoughts. But I do think that compassion for others begins with compassion for ourselves. Kindness for others begins with kindness for ourselves. We have to love ourselves before we can truly love another. You only can give what you have to give. So you need to begin by, filling up your glass first before you can share. Oh, there's a little bit of ice there. Before you can share with others. I guess in a way, it's like when you're in the plane and they say you have the oxygen mask, and they always say for the parents to put that on first before assisting children, which for a while I always thought that was pretty strange, but I get it. Like, you got to make sure that you can breathe and then you can assist others. So the same kind of thing. Evan asked me, how do you meditate? Well, we could do it a little bit here right now, actually, but it's not something to really overthink. I actually sit on the floor cross-legged, and you can just rest your hands like on your legs, facing down. I actually do have my palms facing up, kind of like this. And I try to just kind of connect to the energy around me with my palms up. But some people like to ground themselves with their palms down. And you can start to just let your eyes get soft. You want to have pretty good posture, but relaxed. And then you can close your eyes and just focus on your breath. I breathe in my nose slowly and out my mouth. And I'll notice really low, deep breath from my stomach area. So the stomach really expands for me and then comes back in. And just slowly in your nose, out your mouth. It's generally about in for 4, out for 8, if I were to count it. And I sometimes will listen to different things. I have some YouTube apps that play music reflective of different hertz, and they generate music. Like 432 is supposed to be a positive kind of level of music. So that helps calm me, and it makes me really peaceful. Before I give a presentation, I listen to this music that's called it's like the genius frequency, to help really like generate your mind at its highest level, and that seems to really help center me as well. But I'm teaching a mindfulness online course through Vandercook College this summer, and I wanted to experiment with the different apps that are out there so I could refer to them with my students. So somebody shared the Headspace app with me, and that's somebody who talks you through the meditation. And one of the things that Headspace does is they talk you through a body scan. So you think about the top of your head, and then you think about your face, and then your neck, and you think about how does it feel? Like, do you feel pain? Do you feel tension there? And you just kind of go through all the way to the soles of your feet. And it's non-judgmental. Like if you feel stress or tense, it's like you don't judge yourself. You just become aware. So meditation and mindfulness is becoming more aware. And that's what helps us reflect. And it's not that you don't feel emotions when you're mindful. You might still feel upset and angry and stuff. But what you can do is you can actually start to think about it like, oh, I'm feeling this way. I'm aware that I'm feeling this way. How does it make me feel? How do I normally react when I feel that way? And am I happy with myself when I react that way? And that time of thinking can create a different response. So maybe you respond with listening instead of a reaction. Maybe you respond with kindness or compassion because you've taken the time to be self-aware. And I find that meditating in the morning, breathing deeply, just centering in the morning creates almost a force field for me for throughout the day, to be able to take in the unknowns as they come, and to almost like just brush right off of me. And so I've been happier and more centered as I have been meditating now for quite a few years. And I notice if I don't meditate in the morning, the day seems off kilter. So I'd encourage you to maybe give it a try. Some people prefer to meditate at night. It helps them to go to sleep. But I find that if I can start the morning off really positively, that I can have a great day. So hopefully that helps. And we're getting some others to jump in here talking about, 10% Happier. Right. I actually have that book. I haven't checked out the app. That's great. I actually didn't realize there was an app that came with that book, 10% Happier. And that's about a broadcaster who had a meltdown on live TV. And he found out about meditation, and he wanted to investigate to see if mindfulness and meditation made a difference. And he came to the conclusion that, hey, it's great. It's not going to completely transform your life. You're not going to become like the happiest person in the world necessarily if you meditate. But so he concluded that it leads to 10% happier. But, hey, if that happens, let's get it, right? Let's do it. Because who doesn't want to be 10% happier? And there's another great book I'm going to recommend to you, since we're talking about happiness. It's called Broadcasting Happiness by Michelle Galan. And this is a great story. Michelle Galan, as a youngster, she was growing up. Her life's dream was to become a television broadcaster. And so her first job was being a broadcaster in El Paso, Texas. And she enjoyed it, but she aspired for a higher level. And so when the job opened in New York for CBS news anchor, she applied, and she got the job at a young age. She was in her early or mid-20s. And so she moved to New York, super excited for the gig. And as she was reporting, she was recognizing that almost all of the news she was reporting on was negative. And she was seeing the impact on herself and on others, was showing and broadcasting this negative news night after night after night after night. And I bet a lot of you can relate to that. And so rather than just continuing to do that because she wasn't comfortable with it, she went to the execs of CBS with a proposal. She said, I want to try something if you'll let me do it. She said, I'd like to report on positive news only for 1 week and see what happens. And the CBS executives agreed, which I think is amazing. So for 1 week, Michelle Galan reported on only positive news. And for that 1 week, CBS received more positive feedback than they did for all the rest of the news reporting that they had done all year. Wow. And then CBS went back to reporting mostly negative news like everybody else. But Michelle Galan didn't stick with that gig. She decided to quit. She quit her gig and went to the University of Pennsylvania to pursue a graduate degree in positive psychology. And while she was there, she discovered that it's not just broadcasters that get to broadcast to the world. Every human being is a broadcaster. That's the breaking news. Every human being is a broadcaster. We are broadcasting all the time, whether we know it or not, or like it or not. We are broadcasting positivity, or we are broadcasting negativity. We are broadcasting apathy, or we are broadcasting excitement. We are broadcasting anger, or we are broadcasting love. We are broadcasting peace. We are broadcasting hate. And it turns out what we broadcast is contagious. Michelle Galan realized that when we choose to broadcast happiness, it lifts us all up. It lifts us physically up. We'll live longer. There's been studies on smiles, by the way, that people that smile more often will live up to 7 years longer than people that don't. So keep on smiling. But as a teacher, whatever you broadcast is going to spread to your students. And you'll realize what an uplifting classroom you can create just based on what you're feeling inside. So if you can find that place to find more gratitude, to find more appreciation, to find more joy, and to notice it, because I'll tell you what, it's already there. It's already there. We just have to find it and realize that it's often just right in front of our eyes, but we haven't stopped to notice. But I bet in this time of sheltering in place, we have had time to self-reflect and to pause and to see what we can learn in this time. I love that. Serena, yes, spread joy, not germs. I'll tell you what, I believe so much that, we were talking about COVID being so contagious, and I wrote an article in a YouTube, I have a YouTube channel, Upbeat Global, and the topic is, what else is contagious? Positivity. And I want to spread positivity across the globe like a virus, because I know that as we spread positivity, we can lift others up, and that's fantastic. So check out that book, Broadcasting Happiness. I think you'll love it. The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker, happens to be Michelle Galan's husband. I'll write in that book too if you're interested in this topic. But I love this stuff. And I'm always looking for another book to read. So if you have something you want to recommend to me, it's great that Shannon offered 10% Happier. I started reading the book. I didn't finish it yet. So if you recommend it, I will go back to it. But yeah, I love CSI also, just as a great way to find out new books to read, new TED Talks to watch, new methods of teaching, and new people to meet. It's been really, really exciting. And thank you to everybody who's spent this hour together tonight just to dive deeper. The Book of Joy. Yes. Yeah. That's the Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama book. Yeah. I have the Dalai Lama, The Art of Happiness as well. So I'll write that down as well. Actually, The Art of Happiness is one of the chapters from that book we're reading with my mindfulness class. Love it. Oh, here's another book that's also for my mindfulness class. It's called Mindfulness for Beginners. in the chat right now as we're sharing books with each other. I hope you love it. It comes with a CD. It's a wonderful meditation CD. So wonderful. The other ones are pretty much Robert Fulghum. Oh yeah, cool. Wonderful. Before you go, what are your must reads? Okay. Well, I'm like I said, I'm huge on mindset. So mindset, Carol Dweck, the culture code. I mentioned that in one of my talks today. Daniel Coyle, the culture code by Daniel Coyle is highly influential. And here's a very influential book on me. It's called The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer. And it turns out that Wayne Dyer is one of the greatest influences on Dr. Tim Lotzenheiser as well. So you might find some really powerful information there. Wayne Dyer has a lot of books that he read that you can find on YouTube. He passed away a few years ago, but his message is really, really powerful and strong. He's the one who said the phrase, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And you may have heard me or Dr. Tim quote that. So Amanda, when are you writing a book, Matthew? Amanda, I would love to do that soon. And I appreciate you asking. I may write a book called Mindfulness for the Music Educator. I might write a book on upbeat leadership, or maybe I'll put it all together. Evan, thanks so much for spending time with me tonight. And I hope our paths cross again. It's been wonderful. And Amanda, thanks for being here, sharing the book. Everything I Need to Know is What I Learned in Kindergarten. That's what a classic. Absolutely a classic. I'd like to reread that book again. It's probably been about 20, 25 years since I read that book, but I'd love to check it out. Those of you that are still here for our final minutes, I'd love to, if you have anything left to say, any other books to drop in the chat to share. And I just want to wish everybody a wonderful summer. And I hope that your fall is incredible. And I'm here for you. I'll drop my email in here too if you want to stay in touch. Or of course, check me out on Facebook, Matthew Arau, or my Facebook, Upbeat Global, or my website, upbeatglobal.com, so we can stay in touch. And yeah, together we can do so much. Together we got this. So you guys stay safe and continue to change lives. All right. Best wishes. Best wishes to all of you. It's been a great CSI. Until next time.